Alright guys, so today I want to update one of my favorite descendants, and that is Ines. I really like Time of the Hunting Hounds on Ines, so that is going to be the main build we showcase. But I do know that a few other builds have become kind of popular, and I want to make sure to showcase a couple different builds, that way you guys have options when it comes to how you play your Ines. So we will be looking at a Time of the Hunting Hounds build, we'll be looking at a no red mod build, and we'll be looking at another one of my favorite ways to play Ines, which is with the Bravery Set. Having said all that guys, let's hop into the video. Alright guys, so as always, the first thing we're going to look at for this build is going to be Ines's weapons, and her main weapon is going to be the Secret Garden. This weapon is a great stat stick for any tech descendant, and that's what we're going to be using it for here on this build. The main thing to put on this is going to be the 3 sprint speed cores. Everything other than that is purely optional, as you're probably not going to be firing this weapon if at all. I'll go ahead and showcase the roll on my weapon, but again, remember that this is just a stat stick and you don't need to put these on here if you don't feel like it, but I do have firearm attack, firearm critical hit damage, bonus attack versus order of truth, and firearm critical hit rate just to round this weapon out. When it comes to the build on the weapon, this is what I have on here. As you can see, I don't actually really have that much on here for a quality of life for this being a stat stick. It does have a little bit of a build on it, so this is what I have on here. Feel free to put this on your weapon if you want, if you have the spare catalyst to burn. If not, do not worry about it because you will not be shooting this weapon at all. For our second weapon, this is going to be our actual main DPS weapon when we go to do DPS with a weapon. We are talking about the Last Dagger. We do love the Last Dagger in a lot of our builds, but for now you're going to be looking at 1 firearm critical hit damage core, 2 firearm attack cores, 1 fire rate, and 1 rounds per mag. Our goal here is just to round this weapon out and make it good for almost any content you can think about taking it into. When it comes to the roll down bottom, we're going to be looking at bonus attack versus Colossus, critical hit damage, arm attack, and weak point damage. When it comes to the mods on the weapon, this is what we're going to be looking at. This is a very all-arounder kind of build. We have a lot of weak point damage, we have a lot of critical hit damage, we have some fire rate up, and we have some base weapon damage. There is 1 fire mod on here, and you can always swap that out for whatever type of content you're going into, just to give you a little bit of that type advantage. When it comes to the reactor for this build, this is the reactor that I actually like. I really like the tech reactor with this, and I like it to have skill critical hit damage and skill cooldown. I really like to be able to spam Ines's skills, and this is going to help us have as much spam ability as we can get in our current build. So this is the role that I would suggest you get when it comes to the reactor on Ines. When it comes to the components on Ines, because the electric descendants didn't really get any love with the latest component update, we're going to go ahead and just put the Slayer set on here. This is going to give us a little bit of extra bonus damage, which is always a nice thing. For the component cores, go ahead and put on HP and defense, as both of those are going to give you a little bit more survivability, and you're going to really want that when you see the build that we have, because like most of our builds, we've basically ripped out all of the survivability in favor of damage, just due to the current difficulty of the content we have. When it comes to the inversion reinforcement, this is what we're going to be looking at for this build. We are going to go ahead and use Arche circulation tactic to help with a little bit of that cooldown. We are going to go ahead with biodensity augmentation for a little bit of survivability, but the one thing we're going to switch out is we're going to switch out to rounds on this build, and you're going to want to put rounds on depending on the content you're going into. Typically, we would put something else here to give us a little bit of MP, but we don't really need MP on Ines, so this is going to be the best of both worlds. For the arcade tuning, this is the tree we're going to be going for. As you can see here, we get some really solid skill power increases. We do get electric cohesion in the top. We get a little bit of cooldown, which is always nice, and then we're going to run over and get a little bit more skill crit hit damage, just to increase the damage that this build can do and make our lives just a little bit better. For the dog, again, it really doesn't matter. Just go ahead and use the Hagio sheepdog. It's going to give you a little bit more survivability, and you don't really need the other dog, as the rounds don't really matter in this build. So in this build, when it comes to the mods, we're definitely going to be using Time of the Hunting Hounds. We really like this because it keeps all of our skills tech, and it's going to give us the best opportunity to do as much damage as we can with all of our skills and really utilize our reactor. Outside of that, we're going to put as much cooldown on this build as we can, and we're going to put as much critical hit damage on this build as we can. We're going to add some range, and then we're going to finish this off with some Potent Collector. We like Potent Collector here because it just really facilitates us doing more damage, as we don't have to worry about getting a bunch of kills to be able to use our skills. So now we're going to talk about how to use this build. You're going to be using this build in a lot of general content, and you can even take it into Purge if you want. The playstyle is going to change a little bit between general content and Purge, but not really that much. In general content, you're just going to sprint around as much as you can. When you get into large rooms, you're going to go ahead and hit a 1, and then you're going to open up with a 2. That should cause a bunch of damage to a lot of enemies. Once you've done that, if you have no special resource, it's time to start looking at putting your 4s down. When it comes time to using your 4s, you really want to look for areas that you know are going to spawn a lot of enemies and get your 4s set up there. Then it just becomes using your 1s, your 2s, and your 4s as you have them off of cooldown. Keep the area under constant DPS, and you'll be fine to move on to the next zone. Now in this build, you do have access to your 3, and for most enemies in general content like 400s and Sigma, you're probably not going to utilize it a whole lot. In something like Purge, you probably will, but in Purge, you need to pay attention to where the enemies are. Charging up this skill and dashing in is going to open you up to a lot of direct damage, so you don't want to do this from the front of an enemy. You kind of want to take your time and make sure you place this in the right spot to ensure that you're not going to get nuked while you're trying to nuke the enemies. Outside of Purge, the only time you're really going to use this is going to be for end of match bosses. And for those, the same concept applies. Make sure you are not the one tanking, and if you are, make sure you are behind cover while you're charging up, and then use it to dart out from cover just to get that damage in, and then move away from the enemies. So the second build I want to showcase is something that you're probably going to use a lot in medial content. And by that I mean 250s, 400s, Sigma, Void Vessel, things that you're running really fast and don't really require a lot of damage. And yes, I'm talking about the Bravery build. I really enjoy this build because it allows us to spam R4 and move around the map insanely fast on Ines. So for this build, not a lot actually changes. One of the main changes is going to be your component set. For your component set, go ahead and swap out to the Bravery set, and then make sure that these have HP and defense on the roll. Just going to make your life a little bit better and help keep you alive in some of these more sticky situations that you might find yourself in when you're leading the pack. Where we do switch things up a little bit is we do switch up to Electric Master, and the reason we do that is because we did cut our Slayer set, and we do want to have a little bit of skill power, just so we have that bucket opened up. An Electric Master does that for us. It gives us access to our skill power while giving us roughly the same amount of points that we had distributed before. It just puts them in a couple different buckets, which I like because it's going to help with our damage. And now it's time to talk about how to play this build. And this build is going to play very similar to the last build we talked about on the startup. Once the build gets running, it's going to start to play a little bit different. The main thing you're going to want to do here is use your 1 and your 2 to build up some special resource. After you get that built up, the main thing you're going to be using is going to be your 4. You're going to be putting your 4s down as much as possible. This is twofold. 1, it's going to give you a bunch of move speed increase, and 2, it's going to give you really good coverage on the map. While your 4 is out, you're going to go ahead and use your 2s and 1s just to increase the damage you're doing. While we have 4s on the ground, go ahead and spam your 2 because your 2 is going to give you a very wide-reaching attack. It's going to hit a lot of the enemies and a lot of the enemies that are covered under your 4. Generally, most things aren't going to survive this, and you're just going to be waiting for enemies to spawn, and when they spawn, you're going to continue to keep them under your 4s, and you're going to continue to hammer them with 2s. And then when it comes to the final boss, you're going to go ahead and do the same thing we've done with the other build. You're going to use your 1 and your 3 to try to burn out the bosses at the end of the missions. So for the third build, we are going to be making just a couple minor tweaks, and that is going to be to allow us to really utilize a no red mod build on Ines. Now there are some use cases for this build, and this is something that people tend to typically like a little bit more in Purge, only because a lot of the risk that you have from using Time of the Hunting Hounds is mitigated because you're allowed to hit enemies through walls with this build, but you are sacrificing a little bit of damage to do that. At the end of the day, this is entirely up to you and your playstyle. If you like something that is cozy and safe, then this is going to do a little bit better for you, even though there's going to be a little bit of a drop off in the total amount of damage you can do throughout your entire skill kit. For this build, none of the weapons are going to change. The main thing that's going to change is going to be your reactor. For your reactor here, you're going to want to use a singular reactor, and the main reason for that is that it is going to allow you to do even more damage with your 3, and that is going to be the skill that you're going to be focusing on with this build. When it comes to the roll on this reactor, I would get something a little bit different than what I have here. You are going to want to keep the skill critical hit damage, but you will want to get rid of that electric skill power boost ratio for something like cooldown. Our main goal here is to be able to spam our skills, and having that cooldown on a reactor is really going to help facilitate that. So when it comes to the mods, the main thing we're going to swap out from our Hunting Hounds is going to be the focus on singular, and we're going to want that instead of focus on tech, because most of our damage is going to be coming from our singular skills, because we're going to really be focusing on trying to spam R3 as much as possible. Other than that, the build is pretty much going to remain the exact same. For this build, you're going to focus on things a little bit different. You are going to use your 1, your 2, and your 3 when you're moving around the map. And this build is more for enemies that have really high chunky health, like something in Purge, where you're really going to want to be able to utilize your 3. So in something like Purge, you're going to be using your 1 and your 2 to build up special resource. And then you're going to be using that special resource to unload your 3 at enemies. Now, if you have a big group of enemies, you can go ahead and use your 4 and then throw in some 3s with it. But the main priority here is to utilize your 3 as much as possible. Your 3 has a very, very wide reaching range in front of it, and you're going to be able to hit a lot of enemies at once. The main thing here is learning your positioning on maps. This really excels in maps that have a lot of corridors and a lot of tight areas with a lot of cover. If you're playing in a very wide open map, this is actually a little bit of a harder build to utilize. But as long as you have cover, you're just going to position yourself between cover, because your thunderclap will go through that cover and hit enemies. When you get to the final boss, you can utilize your 3 and you can utilize your last dagger to burn them out and really to end those matches quickly, especially in something like Void Erosion Purge. Alright guys, and that's it. That's everything you need to know about Ines. I really wanted to showcase a couple different builds here. I'm personally a huge fan of Time of the Hunting Hounds. I love this build for just about all content, and I typically do not get off of it. I use it for everything from low-level content all the way up to Void Erosion Purge. But here recently, I have been prioritizing the Brave set in a lot of my runs just because we do so much damage and the enemies are so weak that being able to spam my skills just makes me clear the map even faster. So if you haven't tried the Brave set, give the Bravery set a try and see what you think. Now, I know there have been a lot of people, even people in my community, that have been utilizing the no red mod build, and I wanted to put that out there in case it's something that you're considering trying. That way you have access to this build and you can see if it works well with your playstyle. But at the end of the day, it's entirely up to you and how you want to play the game and how you enjoy the content. Speaking of content, if you enjoyed the content, consider liking and subscribing for more First Descendant content, as well as other game coverage in the future. And if you want to get to know me and the community better, you can always consider coming over and watching us live here on YouTube, or you can swing by the Twitch channel. We do stream 5 days a week, and we would love to have you, and we would love to get to know you a little bit better. But having said all that, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.